Our next guest, a very talented comedian, actor, and podcasting pioneer you know from shows like Glow, Maron, and Stick, as well as his podcast, WTF with Marc Maron. His latest special, Panicked, premieres Friday on HBO and streams on HBO Max. Let's take a look.
So I finally called the vet, and I was like, you know, he's all over the house. He's beating up on the other cats when I'm gone. And she goes, well, he has separation anxiety, and that's separation anxiety-induced colitis. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do? And she goes, well, generally we'll prescribe Prozac for cats that have that. And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. She's like, what are you talking about? He all over the house. And he's beating up on the other cats. And I'm like, yeah, but I want him to be his authentic self. You know,
Please welcome back to the show, Marc Maron, everybody. How are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking, you know, for a long time, you sort of have had, this demeanor of a guy who comes out on stage and is very funny, but often tells people, like, things are bad and they're only getting worse. You must feel, like, very just rewarded right now by the fact that, like, nothing has happened.
Yeah, I was right.
You were right. Yeah.
What a big day. I'm so glad everything...
Nothing of yours has aged badly.
Yeah,
like, almost
good.
Everything you told us was going to get
evergreen. It's going to get evergreen.
Hey, I was very honored to do your podcast, and I did it. We go to your home, and then we go out to the garage. Recently, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And then as I was walking out, you went back into your house, and I got to my car, and I was like, oh, I have one more thing to tell you.
Yeah.
And I went to the door.
Yeah.
And I like knocked and rang the doorbell, and there was like literally nothing. And you'd walked in like 10 seconds earlier.
Wow. Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah.
Why, I was watching you on the Ring camera. And I was like, what the hell does he want? I just was with him for an hour. What could he possibly need?
That was
and I
my
watched
fear.
you walk away.
Yeah,
It was
well,
okay.
yep. You waited me out.
Yeah.
You do, obviously, this would not have worked as a podcast if it wasn't the case, but you make people feel comfortable, and that allows them to reveal maybe more than they plan to reveal. Like, how did you find your way to, like, making people relax over the course of your conversation?
Well, they had to come to my house, you know, and originally it was a very small house, one bathroom. It was a pretty old beat-up house. The garage was a pretty old beat-up garage, like 1920s beat-up. And they would have to walk in, and no matter what they were expecting, they were like, oh, this guy's not living great. and they... But a lot of times, you know, there's something about that, and also because it's audio, you know, we remain audio for a reason. And so they don't come with an entourage. But a lot of times people come over and I'll be like, you want something, a coffee or something? And people have literally said, well, I'm kind of hungry. And then I got to go into my fridge, you know? So it's not like I have a table of snacks.
Yeah.
Like one time, you know, John Glazer?
Yeah, of course.
He's like, I'm hungry. I'm like, what do you got? Well, I got these, you know, these sausages, these chicken hot dog things. He's like, yeah, I want you to cook me up one of those, you know? So I cook him up a hot dog and wait it out. Sometimes I'll ask if people want coffee, and I'll just hope I have coffee left over in my little thermos thing that I made for myself. So it's always a crapshoot, you know? I'm like, you want coffee? And they're like, yeah, I'd like some coffee. I'm like, oh, all right, so yeah, I'll make you a pot. So then we go into the kitchen, and I'm sitting there making someone coffee. And I'm like, don't talk. We're going to do the podcast. Just sit there and watch me make the coffee. Don't say anything.
I remember that the first time I did it, because I showed up and I did it at 2 locations, but the first time I showed up, I remember starting to talk to you, and it was really, because again, you have, you know, don't take this the wrong way, you have a reputation as being a little irascible, and it was very funny that, like,
what are you talking about, Seth? That's ridiculous.
It's so funny to go to a podcaster's house and then immediately he's like, no, don't talk. But
yeah,
it's
it's usually just a question of, like, you know, what part of town am I in? That's gold. Don't you? Let's save that. One time, Kristen Bell came over and she was starving. I don't know why.
Yeah.
You know, she hadn't eaten. And this was like after the show. And she's like, I'm hungry. And I'm like, you know, I'm kind of a plant-based guy. So I had like kale and some like carrots and maybe some like tempeh or tofu. And I'm like, I have kale and carrots and tempeh. She's like, that's just like I eat at home. So I made her a plate, and
my
I sat
God.
there and watched her eat.
This
And it was
is-
off. Off hours.
Yeah. This is an indictment of like all of us in showbiz that we just assume everywhere we go there's just gonna be food for us.
Yeah, a tray. Yeah,
like
yeah.
that none of us are like, I
Yeah.
should eat at my house before I go into the world.
I forget to eat sometimes.
You were just, WTF was named one of Time Magazine's top 100 podcasts.
Top
of all time.
100.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Top 100.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, it would have been top 10. That was all the. There was only 10.
Yeah.
And
It
you're
would
just
have been-
wondering where you'd be out of the 10.
You would have been one of the only 10.
Yeah, exactly.
It must be, I mean, again, you were a pioneer in podcasting, and you just announced...
coincidence,
A
but yeah,
coincidence,
yeah.
but still, you
Coincidental
know.
pioneer.
A lot of pioneers they just fell into it.
Absolutely. A lot of astronauts are like, why am I in space? Yeah, all right.
So you just announced you're calling it quits,
Yeah.
which is, I think,
Well-
hard for everybody to hear, but I think we appreciate that you came to the decision on your own.
Yeah, it was a hard decision, but let's be honest, enough is enough. You know?
Right.
So, no, we've done like upwards of 1,600 episodes. I've talked to everybody, some people like twice. And and once you start going back a third time, you're like, we gotta get out of this racket. But no, I mean, I think, you know, the media landscape has changed. Brendan and I, Brendan McDonald, my producer, we're a two-man shop. You know,
Yeah.
he produces, you know, I do the talking, and we do a new show. It was always the promise we made to ourselves and to everyone, 2 new shows every week. And it's a lot. It
Yeah.
becomes, it may just seem like you're just throwing something on and listening to it, but a lot of work goes into structuring the show, editing the show, and, you know, talking to people, which I like, which is my biggest fear about ending the show, is like, who the hell am I going to talk to? You know, I better, you know, broaden my social circle.
I bet a year from now I come to your house and knock, you're going to open that door.
I'll open the door. I'm like, God, I'm so glad you came. I haven't gotten out of my robe in 3 days. Did you bring any food, Seth? So, but I think by doing it, I think you don't want to. Now it's a body of work, right? And it's very specific, and I think all the interviews are fairly unique and special. And there's no reason to just keep plowing along because you can if your heart isn't into it. We didn't get into it. We didn't get into it for the money. We got into it because we wanted to make a great thing, and we did. And now we can leave it at that.
You also, obviously, the whole time you're doing this, and I bet it does, you know, keep you creatively, you know, engaged when you're doing the podcast, but you also, you know, a robust stand-up career and a fantastic new special. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. A lot of work went into this, and I'm very proud of this special for a lot of reasons.
I'm very happy to hear this, though, because the couple times I've done it, I have so overthought my wardrobe, and yet when I think of my favorite stand-up specials, other than Eddie Murphy, I cannot remember what anybody ever wore in a special ever. You know what I mean? There's 2 outfits I remember. They're both Eddie Murphy specials.
Right.
But you also overthought your outfit?
Dude, for this show, there was an hour of like, what's wrong with the jacket? You know, do I need to have this shirt steamed? Do you have an undershirt? I'm wearing one of your undershirts right now.
Great.
So,
Please keep it.
thank you. I will. No, I've made, you know, bad fashion decisions for my entire career.
Yeah, but I liked what you were wearing in this.
I committed to that thing months before the special. Yeah. I wore that outfit months before the special. And there was still a problem with the outfit because I love the shirt. You know, I get it from this guy in Portland. He makes stuff. This guy, Ship John, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike in Portland at Ship John makes stuff. So I was very committed to the shirt, but it's a heavy fabric, but it's got a certain look. And leading up to the special, I noticed that when I sat down, in between the buttons would open up so you could see my stomach. And I was like, God, why can't I just wear the shirt? But by the time the special came, I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm committed. I'm going to wear it. But I was still nervous about it. And you don't want to go on stage where you're doing your show, and every time you sit down, you're like, oh, God, you know, I hope it's not, you know. So I got to the theater, and they have a wardrobe person who works for the theater, and I said, well, I just got this one issue. She's like, that's no problem. We'll just put snaps behind the seam that you can't see and close the shirt. And I'm like, you just made the special good.
Yeah.
Because now I won't be thinking about that the entire time I'm on stage.
It's a great special. And by the way, in the beginning, you know, all your specials are like this, but I like when you're walking around, and yet when Mark sits on a stool, I feel very at peace.
Well, I appreciate that. I've been doing this a long time. I went through a more aggressive walking around period.
Yeah.
And then I was an aggressive sitter.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, hey, mix it up a little bit.
I want to close just by saying we were a big fan of Bad Guys 1 in
That's
our family.
me.
That's you. And you're a snake in Bad Guys too. And I only want to ask you about it because I've seen you do press and you don't seem to like talking about it at all.
Do you know what it's like?
I think you liked being in the movie, and I think you liked doing the movie, but I think it's so funny.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay, great.
You've got a person out here, he's plugging an animated movie.
Yeah.
How's that questioning going to go?
Yeah.
How many times can you hear like, so if you weren't a snake, what animal do you think you'd be and why? And I'm like, do I have to do this? And it's always some variation about that.
Yeah.
So you're all very, interested. How did you get into the snake character? I'll explain it to you. I have this voice, then went, hey, I'm the snake now.
Yeah. It really, I mean, if you're an animator and you get to answer the questions, they're like, we made him a snake.
Yeah.
Like this, it's just his voice. Like, you want to know how we made Mark a snake? Ask us.
Yeah, and you know what they like to ask about is the efforts.
Yeah.
Now, efforts, if you don't know, this is where after the end of the day of recording voiceover for animation, they want noises. Like, so they just to drop in if they need them. So they're like, give us a grunt. You're like, ugh. And they're like, give us a lighter grunt. Like,
you know what? This has turned into some very good press for Bad Guys too.
Oh, yeah, it has, yeah.
Against your best efforts, and it's actually really good.
No, it's actually a very exciting movie. I'm not really, in terms of an audience member, an animation guy, but this thing, because I don't watch them, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like the action and everything, and it's a clever movie, and there's a lot more in this one than the other one. But the special is
the real Mark. The real Mark is in the special.
Panicked on HBO.
It's Panicked on HBO. It's really special, and I mean, I've always been a fan, but it's a great special.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you. It's great to have you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mark Maron, everybody. Panicked premieres Friday at HBO. Streams on HBO Max. We'll be right back.